Hello, this is Alex S. Johnson, and this is the Candy Fontaine Show. I'm Alex S. Johnson, aka Candy Fontaine, and I'm really excited about our special guest today. Two good friends of mine and people I've known for, I mean, substantial period of time. Richard Longer, and so I'll just introduce them. Richard Modiano is a Los Angeles poet, arts advocate, and longtime cultural organizer, widely recognized for his decades of service to the West Coast literary community. His career began in New York City, where he became active in the legendary poetry project scene and came to know figures such as Gregory Corso, Allen Ginsberg, Anne Waldman, William S. Burroughs, and Ted Berrigan. After returning to California, Modiano served on the board of directors of the Valley Contemporary Poets from 1995 to 2001. In 2001, he joined Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center as a programmer, later joining its board of trustees in 2006, and ultimately serving as executive director from 2010 to 2019, during which he produced and curated hundreds of literary events and co-founded the Pacific Coast Poetry Series imprint with Henry Morrow, Suzanne Lummis, and Liz Camfjord. Modiano's contributions to literary culture have been widely recognized. He was named by the Huffington Post as one of 200 people doing the most to promote poetry in the United States, elected vice president of the California State Poetry Society in 2019, recipient of the Joe Hill Prize for Labor Poetry in 2022. And his poetry collection, The Forbidden Lunchbox, is published by Punk Hostage Press. That's Iris Berry and A Razor. Modiano is also a rank and file member of the Industrial Workers of the World, aka the Wobblies, reflecting his longstanding commitment to labor rights and cultural equity. Rick Lupert is a Southern California poet, humorist, editor, performer, and community builder, has been active in the Los Angeles poetry scene since 1990. He is the founder of the Poetry Superhighway, one of the internet's longest running and most recognized, most influential poetry platforms. He has received multiple honors, including the 2014 Beyond Baroque Distinguished Service Award and the 2017 Ted Slade Award as a three-time Pushcart Prize nominee, as well as a Best of the Net nominee. He served for 2 years as co-director of the Valley Contemporary Poets and hosted the iconic Cobalt Cafe reading series for nearly 21 years, now continued as a weekly Zoom event. And I've been honored, to be a spotlight poet at the Cobalt Cafe reading series. A prolific author, Lupert has written 25 to 28 books of poetry, depending on the cataloging, including the Tokyo Van Nuys Express, Honka Honka Howdy, God Wrestler, Beautiful Mistakes, Donut Famine, and Donut Famine. And I am my own Orange County. I love that title. His work has appeared in publications such as Los Angeles Times, Rattle, Turin Review, Red Fez, The Nervous Breakdown, and many others. He's also the editor of several anthologies, including A Poet's Siddar, Ekphrastia Gone Wild, A Poet's Haggadah, and the noir-inspired The Night Goes On All Night. Um, and he has also co-created the webcomic Cat and Banana with Brendan Constantine and writes the column From the Lupert verse, for Jewish Journal.com. He is also a song leader in the Reformed Jewish movement and the author of God Wrestler, a poem for every Torah portion. So welcome, Rick Lupert and Richard Modiano.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Thank you. So, um, I was just going back and looking at some old videos and some old readings, and I don't have a specific agenda, but I'm very interested in mythic origin stories. And so just for during this hour, I want to do a deep dive in some, mythic origin stories of how, you, Rick, and you, Richard, got on board with, the arts, with poetry, what delighted and fascinated you. And also, I want to finally nail down the mythic origin story of Ellyn Maybe's debut because I still don't have it. I've gotten pieces from Iris Berry, and I've got pieces from Ellen, and then so I keep getting, you know, portions of it, but I don't have the full thing. And since I'm finally putting together the Ellyn Maybe tribute anthology, which you are both contributors to, I just want to be able to nail that down. And so, what I think to start, could I have you, Richard, read whatever you like, whatever poem you like?
Okay, well, I just came. I was in New York City recently as part of the Gonzo Fest,
Oh, nice.
but my that was sort of secondary to what I really wanted to do was to meet my writing partner, Jane LaCroix. I belong to a group called Daily Write.
Hmm.
We get a new writing partner each week, a new set of prompts, etc.
Yeah.
And Jane is like certainly one of the best poets. I'll read some of her work later, but um, to give you a background, let me see if I can find this poem. I'll read this if I can find it. Let's see. I know I have it here somewhere. Should be the last one. Ah, here we go. As beautiful as a revolution. She walks in like a bright switchblade him, like an uptown bikini with lipstick made of lightning, like the ghost of Rimbaud riding shotgun in a beat-up tour van, full of amps and prophecy and a half-eaten bag of hot Cheetos. And the universe says yes, yes, yes. Her name sounds like a French cathedral built out of breath and spit and glitter. Her throat is a riot. Her lungs are a jukebox for the feral and the tender. Her eyes have seen every late night truth that crawls out of the gutter to sing. She is poet. She is performance. She is the electric sermon in the rugged vihara of the body. She is the high wire act of language, walking barefoot over the abyss and laughing and laughing and laughing because the abyss is just another audience waiting to be moved. She's the kind of woman who can make a microphone blush, the kind of woman who makes the room remember it has blood. Excuse me, my cat got in the way. The kind of woman who can speak one line and the whole crowd feels the floor drop out and calls it freedom. She is not delicate. She is precise. She is a hammer made of velvet. She is a razor wrapped in roses. She is a shot of whiskey poured directly into the mouth of the moon. And when she performs, the air gets baptized in sweat and syllables, like cheap lights become halos. The drunks become disciples. The shy ones start to sing, and the whole city's sorrow gets up off its knees and starts dancing. She carries poems like contraband. She smuggles beauty across borders the way desperate lovers smuggle letters in pockets, in bra straps, in guitar cases, in the secret compartments of the heart. She does not write poems, she summons them from the ashtray, from the alleyway, from the cracked mirror, from the motel mattresses of America's fever dream. She drags the truth out by its collar and makes it sing backup. And what is she? She is the teacher goddess of guidance, the empress of cadence, the sanctified mouth of the underground, the patron saint of gorgeous refusal, the deva of unruly art, the one who says, don't behave, don't apologize, don't dim your wild. May her voice never soften for cowards. May her poems keep biting the hand of the bland. May her music keep tearing open the sky like a curtain in a cheap theater, revealing the great burning joke of existence that we are alive, we are alive, we are alive, and it is criminal not to sing about it. All praise to Jane LaCroix, electric lung, uptown oracle, poetry priestess, beautiful troublemaker, singer of the iceberg, slicer of ohms, poet of the holy noise, walking through this century like a match held up to gasoline, like a love letter written in distortion, like a prayer with its sleeves rolled up. And every room she enters gets louder, gets truer, gets saved.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I just want to savor that because I need to know this woman now. And your introduction of her is sort of like a, like a sort of a runway with dynamite or something. It's just like, damn, that's a kind of like a mythic noir sort of Iris Berry, adjacent, femme fatale beat goddess that you're describing. That's really, really, really neat.
Thank you.
Rick, your thoughts?
On Richard's poem. The first of all, I loved it. Fantastic reading of it as well. Great energy to start this time together with. Um, Ironically, the line you said in the middle of the poem, which may not have been part of the text, is one of the things that said a whole lot in my life. Excuse me, my cat got in the way.
Yes.
Um, so I very much resonated with that as well. And not only was that funny and relevant to me, but it's a reminder. I think sometimes we forget to remember before whom we stand and to acknowledge that there's a bigger picture going on around us sometimes, which is just as important and relevant as the things that we're bringing to the table that we might be bringing with a great deal of zeal and importance. So yeah, I dug that.
Thank you. Thank you, Rick.
So that kind of, there's a couple of things that occurred to me. First, excuse me, my cat got in the way might have to be another book. A shared world anthology. Also, I was thinking of, John Cage and how he had wrote scores for silence or ambience, and as well as the Keatsian idea of negative capability, which seems to me that, creatures being part of our environment and, playing, I think, I mean, it was like doing a collective poly anthology of the first edition. I was thinking, you know, creatures have a lot more to do with our lives than we give them credit for often. And so as the negative space or the negative and or negative capability that's represented by creatures is just one of the most beautiful aspects of life. So I just want to give credit for the creatures out there and thank you for being there because otherwise I can't imagine a world in which there's not animals. So that was really groovy, man. So yeah, like so Rick, would you like to read us something? You have a new book, I believe.
I do. Yeah, it's this book. It's called Begin the Beget. Thank you. Anyone who follows me knows that I'm every week I write a new poem that kind of responds to that week's story or text in the Torah in the Old Testament. Um, it's interesting to take on that task. I think for me as there's an ancient tradition of doing so, which is what I
Yeah.
connect to. Um, and a lot of people who do this out of maybe a necessity, maybe out of a mandate, maybe out of a sense of belief and faith. And as someone who is a skeptic about those kinds of things, but certainly very not to the point where I write it off, but who's on the other side very deeply interested in why the people before me did this and the people before them did that, and who feels very strongly connected to this very long chain of tradition. I look at this text specifically because I want to participate in that tradition, not out of a sense of faith and belief exactly, but out of connection. Um, and I really enjoy the challenge of looking at these old stories and trying to figure out what the hell they have to do with me today. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there which uh, is hard to read, and which might not have anything to do with me later on in the text. You know, there's all these rules about how you're supposed to go to war and what happens if you go to war and you're in a town and you capture a woman and you're enchanted by her beauty. What are the rules with that? And you know, there's something that I'm never going to have to deal with personally, you know. So how do I look at that text and find some kind of meaning or lesson in it? And that's what I try to um, uh, get out in what I write. And so this is the first of five of these which are coming out this year. There's five books in the Torah in the Old Testament, and it was a 7 year project. I wrote a poem every week, responding to a line of text. Each section that you read every week is divided into 7 parts. And so the first year I found a line of text in the first part and I responded to that in a poem. And I did that all year. And the second year I found a line in the second part, etc. 7 years has come and gone. And so at the beginning of the reading cycle for each one of these books, I'm going to put out a new one of these. So this is from the book of Genesis, basically. And I'm going to read as you may know in the text, it's a famous story. The story of Adam and Eve and the apple happens early on after the world was created. When I'm teaching kids and we start talking about this text, you know, I kind of tell them, well, it sort of makes sense because nothing else can happen until the world was created because there's no place for it to happen. So this is a poem from that story. It's called A Tale of Apples and Death. And it responds to this line of text. But of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you shall not eat of it, for on that day that you eat thereof, you shall surely die. Knowing how much I know, I wonder how it is I am still alive. Fruit from the tree of knowledge is literally on my dinner plate every day. The original sin is that no one uses the word literally correctly. Further, I tempt the very life that was breathed into my nostrils weekdays at 1 o'clock p.m. by putting an apple on my lunch plate. I cut around the core into 4 slices and then toss its heart into the disposal. Perhaps this is how I get away with it, as knowledge grinds away and the city takes care of it. Sometimes the apples are mushy and it's more of a death than lunch. That feels like an exaggeration, but considering what we all know, and that no one has found the remains of the intersection of the rivers that flowed out of the garden, maybe all of this is suspect. I know as sure as bees live in the palm trees that surround my house that I will surely die. I hope it's not soon, but when it all comes down, let my epitaph read, he knew too much.
Yeah, man. It's got all your signature moves. It's sort of like, it's sort of like listening to an Ellyn Maybe poem where you don't want to be drinking or eating anything because you're gonna like snort and, breathe, inhale milk or coffee or something. So yeah. Oh man, that is so, I mean, it accomplishes a number of things. But I'm thinking about that, the death and the mush and the how do you do it, man? Like, what's your secret? Like,
That's a great question. First of all, it's out of I've given myself this task that I have to write this text every week.
yeah,
And the tradition says that you have to write about that week's text. I can't
Mhm.
look ahead to,
Yeah.
a month from now, and, which means that whatever I'm responding to might not be the most interesting thing. Whenever I do a reading, usually, I'll pull out a poem from that week's text and share it. Even if it's not the funniest or most interesting poem, but the tradition says, well, that's the week it is, so this is what I have to read. Plus, the Los Angeles Jewish Journal publishes these poems every week. So there's a deadline at
Mhm.
stake if I don't continue to write it. So, you know, so I guess the true answer to how do I do it is, well, there's a deadline, and if I don't do it, I'm in trouble. So,
Well, if I may interject, this is Rick's poem response to the text is actually I follow them and they're really terrific. And I wanted to mention to you, Rick, purely there's a Jewish philosopher whose Substack I subscribe to named Corey Robin, and he mentioned that his daughter had a Substack, and she made her own weekly commentary in the same tradition that you're working from. So I subscribed to that, and I got they're totally insightful and profound. And I said, "Gee, this woman is really smart." And then I found out that she was only 17 years old. Yeah, it was astonishing. And your poetic gloss and hers, they sort of complement each other. And I mean, this, uh, I'm relatively not a non-observant Jew, but I have an interest in Jewish culture and Jewish philosophy and ethics, which I find significant in my life, no matter what my belief in the existence or not existence of a deity may be. So these are like they're ethical guidelines, they're philosophical insights, and the Rick's poetry responses are have tremendous profundity if you are familiar with the text. But even standalone, they're still like you got a kick out of that poem that Rick just read, and it's even more profound, if I may say so, if you are familiar with the text that he's talking about. So,
That's one of the beautiful things about like intertextuality because for example, I mean, I was like, I guess it's a fairly obvious, go-to, but when I discovered, my dad took me to the Whole Earth Festival because he was a contributor to the Whole Earth Review, which was a spin-off of the Whole Earth catalog, and you had guys like, I think Corso and Wavy Gravy and Stuart Brand, running around and like Crumb, and he's like, my dad's like, you got to see Ginsberg, right? So we went to the main stage, saw Salito, it's like 1980 or whatever, and he's reading Plutonian Ode for the first time. I mean, it's the debut of Plutonian Ode, and I was just not expecting this. I was like, wow, is that poetry? Because it seems like rock and roll. I just felt like it was something that I wanted to do that, and I wanted to know, where he got it, where he got the fire. And so I started investigating, I started reading more, Ginsberg, and I found, oh, hey, there's this, there's Walt Whitman, right? There's Blake, there's all these, and there's the Bardic tradition, and pretty soon I was hooked. So I think, and talking about mythic origin stories, somebody brings the fire, but they got it from somebody else, right? I mean, you both got it from various sources, and I want to get into that, the mythic origin um, uh, aspect, and I think it's very interesting that we're talking about archetypal stories, origin myths. I mean, in this case, it's literally I think I'm using that correctly. It's literally Genesis, right? You can't go wrong. It's the Torah. The Fertile Crescent is like where we came from, and in that myth, which is also very, very, very archetypal, and there's resonance with Hindu mythology, and there's also resonance with like Icelandic myth, and I find it fascinating, whether or not you subscribe to kind of like a, Jill Campbell or, but I think that there's something to that, these kind of like like a structuralist literary criticism approach where you look at how these deep structures, whether they're, archetypal symbols or images or stories or narratives, how they resonate with different periods, right? And I think like somebody like Ellyn Maybe, for example, with a you know, um, profound relationship to Judaism, certainly you see things that aren't on the surface. And Richard, you just now, pointed out something that I would love to. For example, I took at UC Davis, I took a course in the Bible as literature, right? I thought that was really fascinating because you can read these texts, from a learned, like a spiritual perspective, from any perspective, but they're absolutely beautiful stories, and the symbolism is just really, I mean, it can be funny, right? It can be like, I mean, the apple, the whole apple, and having it just in your, it's just an ordinary thing. Also, I was thinking of like the whole, like I never subscribed to the whole sort of, Robert Frost idea of like playing tennis without a net or whatever, that's gonna kill you. Have you ever, I mean, it's like, have you ever seen Blow Up by Michael Antononi, where they're like these got these
Mhm.
mimes playing tennis, they're miming tennis, and it's like, well, they're playing tennis without a net. They're playing tennis without balls. I mean, or paddles. So anyway, um, there's a lot of literalism, and people have these rules. I'm going on and on. Anyway, that was great. That was really got me all excited about, I love both. It's like dipping into this wonderful stream that never stops yielding new things. And as many times as I've heard, these great poems and these kind of riffs on great poems, and looking at the kind of the what do you call it? Not intersectionality, but the kind of the when how literature connects to itself and just finding new stuff. So, that would be like, hey, I'll go back to look at the Old Testament. And so really thank you so much, Rick, for that. That's really exciting. And thank you, Richard, for introducing me to the world of your friend, Jane LaCroix, is it?
Yes, Jane LaCroix. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So let's see. Was it this one? I want to read an Iris Berry poem, and because it really moves me a lot. And I actually had this book. This is All That Shines Under the Hollywood Sign. This
Mhm.
is Punk Hostage Press, as you know, Citizens for Decent Literature. And this is a very famous poem, but I actually had it because my mom was in the ER. And we didn't know what was wrong with her, and I was just looking and there were people, coming in, and I was sort of trying to do the Burroughs thing where you kind of have, like make a mental note. I didn't have anything to write with, but I was making mental notes of my surroundings and the patients, and sort of eavesdropping on people, and then also kind of correlating those feelings and emotions, and observations with the text, which I had, which was Punk Rock Royalty by Iris Berry. So if you cannot go wrong, um, with this woman. I originally encountered this in the Outlaw Bible of American Poetry, and it's called Punk Rock Royalty. And since I live in a suburb of Sacramento, I thought this is, wow, this is a pretty amazing sub piece. And it's all caps too. Um, okay, Punk Rock Royalty for Rat's Ass. by Iris Berry. Somewhere in Sacramento, California, some well-known crash pad, sometime in the middle of the week and sometime in the middle of the afternoon, day and time, customarily unknown to residents of house, the dishes haven't been washed since July, and it's September. Half empty to-go boxes with 2-week-old pizza and Taco Bell remains, 99-cent burgers from AM PM, and empty bottles of plain wrap liquor and beer cans lay strewn across the kitchen floor, leaving not even a trail in the living room. There's four guys who haven't slept in 3 days trying to pump life out of a keg that's been finished since the weekend, and two pit bulls gnawing on old rib bones. There's flies everywhere, and it's hot. The Hickoids' Tales of Terror, Fang, and Johnny Thunders is blaring out of beer-soaked speakers that periodically keep shorting out. The TV is on, but the sound is off, showing Blue Velvet for the fifth time that day. Must be another Frank Fest. And in the middle of all this, you're locked away in the bathroom like punk rock royalty sitting on your throne, jacking off to my picture in Flipside magazine for the second time that day. Thank you. I feel honored. So, thoughts, gentlemen?
That's a really fun poem.
Yeah.
The whole disaster, as it's described, beginning with the dishes haven't been washed since July. Really, it looks cool. I really loved in your reading of it how much you were clearly enjoying the poem. You kind of had to stop and move your head aside. It was, it's really cool to see someone enjoy a piece of artwork in that way. I'm a huge fan of the movie Blue Velvet, and so the
Me
whole,
too.
the concept of Frankfest, like that's a real specific reference. You know what I'm saying? That only
Yeah.
applies to that film, and that only people have seen. Like you can't have a Frankfest with any other movie. It's only that movie. So I thought that was cool, and I love the way in the poem she, just kind of embraces what people might be doing of the picture of her, in the magazine. It's like, yeah, I mean, that's very punk rock.
For
And
real.
that was, yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
Well, Iris told me, Rick, by the way, that that what somebody was doing with her picture actually happened. A fan told her as much.
Uh, my ongoing rabbinic studies don't allow me to,
Yeah.
comment too much on that, but not surprised.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah, and it's actually it's interesting to me because I'm a bit obsessed with this documentary she and Pleasant Gaiman were in that's called MTV Posers and Punks and Posers from 1985, right? And she and Pleasant are sitting on a bed somewhere. They're surrounded by debauchery. And it's sort of like almost like the Babysitters Club as directed by Hunter S. Thompson, you know. And Pleasant is saying, "What do you write about in your diary?" You know, and Iris is like, "Well," and she starts out and she's actually reading a poem. It's called "If My Friends Could See Me Now," and it starts out, "It's a Johnny Thunders kind of day." And it goes on to describe this bedlam, this chaos, but it's beautifully written. And she actually recited it to me on the phone, and I was like, holy shit, man. That's really, it's a joy. It's a really a joy to hear her, recite her work. So a big shout out to Iris Berry. And I wanted to read one of mine, which is from, I think I'm just going to kind of do a random here. Um, let's see. So Pacific Bop. I think this was published on Juliet Cook's page. Anyway, and this is a little different for me because I tend to be somewhat dark, but this is kind of my trying to, express the joyful quality of Southern California, which I no longer live there, but is the beaches and the sunrises and the sunsets and the ocean, and it's just it's incredible. So this is called Pacific Bop. Draw a finger, a line in the sand, zig whimsically through the surf that struts and zags with hot percussive jazz. Sea gulls, wind and solar saxophone notation, and thick bands of algae strands moving with the groove of the ocean in motion, the curling suck of long tuba toes, the honk of sunshiny flesh and sassy grained elbows, castles anointed, appointed with gates and turrets, gatekeeping foam while bodies sleep on bleach beach blankets, tinted blue dimensions, the slap and snap of a volleyball game, or perched over a book dreamily cooked as the long shadows crawl, the tide comes in and moonlight blows its yellow melting horn over everything.
Well, that's nice.
Thank you.
That's nice. Very nice.
Thank you,
Especially that
Richard.
final image is very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's like jazzy the way you read it too.
Hmm.
It's bebop.
Hmm.
I dug it.
Thank you. Yeah. One of my friends is unfortunately no longer with us and has actually appears in, for if anybody wants a really good read, it's not just because I published it. This is called Anthem, and it contains Rick Lupert's and we have Rick Lupert right here. His poem on it's You're Our Man, which is dedicated to this anthem. It's a collection of an anthology of poems and short stories dedicated to the late great Leonard Cohen. And one of the pieces that I published in here was actually an original sort of like it's halfway between it's like a prose poem, it's a short story, it's unclassifiable by guy named Joseph S. Pulver Sr. And what's interesting about Joe Pulver, he was a really big fan of jazz. In fact, we probably talked more about jazz than we did anything else. But he's a guy who kind of connects, beat poetry and um and music and kind of more dark, dark fiction or speculative fiction. So he was known for his, weird fantasy stuff as well. Also as an editor. So, Joe was a neat guy, and I'm still in contact with his wife. So, you know, unfortunately, sometimes people leave us, and the co-editor of the book, Jordan Gallagher, was also a great friend of mine and is no longer with us either. So, you know, um, rest in peace, guys. So, let's see. Well, we don't have a whole lot of time, so I thought we would kind of downshift back into. I wanted to present the Pawsey Awards and give that time. So, the Pawsey Awards are a um, are a coinage of Ellyn Maybe. It comes from this poem that she wrote, which actually wound up in the long. What is the Long Island, I think it's called the Long Islander. It's a newspaper that was begun by Walt Whitman himself,
Mhm.
and there's a section called Walt's Corner, which this poem wound its way into, and I think it's so beautiful because I think she's kind of like, the inheritor. I think she's a lot of things. I also she think Ellen is her own genre, but it's a line. There's from this poem, Whiff of Wonder, and it goes, there's something in the collective paw. And when I first heard that, I just thought, wow, man, there is something in the collective paw because as we were discussing before, excuse me, my cat got in the way. In anthology, possibilities abound that, the creatures, they make it they make it so we can inhabit a world that's not just us. You know, I mean, wouldn't it be deeply unpleasant if it was just people? I mean, right? And you got a lot of invisible shit too, like mitochondria, or you got, microbes and stuff. They do their part, right? But I thought there's something in the collective paw is almost like it's um is metaphysical. So there's like an ur animal that's shaping, our that is part of the dynamic. And and so I want to give a big shout out to Ellyn Maybe. For one thing, I wouldn't be doing what I do if it wasn't for her, and to you, Richard, because you and Ellen were kind of, played a pivotal role in my, you know, like publishing in the first place, my work. So thank you. So I developed this thing, the Pawsey Awards. And the Pawsey Awards are basically, so you've both been recognized for your contributions to the arts. And this is another thing. It was first given to Nicole Six, Ron Whitehead, Emily Frank, um, Aaliyah Celeste Williams, and Ellyn Maybe herself, and the Posse Awards. And so it's in 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 recognition of meritorious service to the arts as well as contributions to, service to the to the community. And so I'm very, very happy to bestow on you, Richard Modiano, a Pawsey Award, and it comes with I still don't have the certificate. I mean, Aaliyah created the drawing, and so I'm up on my wall, but it's so basically this is going to have to do for now. It also comes with the Pawsey sign, which
Mhm.
is kind of like the, power to the people labor sign, but with a little more of a paw in it.
Okay.
So that is for you, Richard. Thank you so much for
Well,
all the,
thank you, Alex. Thank you
you
very
know,
much.
you know, you're very welcome, sir. And Rick Lupert, you've been extremely generous with your platforms and, giving me the Cobalt Spotlight, Poet Award, and having Jan Steckel and Ellen come out and read with us. And so that was beautiful. And you're a beautiful person, and I really enjoy your poems and your contributions to my anthologies. I really love the combination. It's sort of like it's 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 so funny sometimes you don't realize that there's another layer there, and then you're like, wow, man. So I would really hope, to I really want to get into the begin the beget and those Old Testament inspired books, because I think that's a really marvelous project. So now I'm bestowing upon you, Rick Lupert, a Pawsey Award in recognition of your service to the arts and our beautiful community.
Thank you, Alex. It's quite an honor. I love the name of the award. I love the people who I'm now a part of in terms of this roster of people who've received it. It's cool. It's an honor, and thank you so much.
Thank you. So in the remaining short time we have left, it's just a few minutes. Um, so Rick, we talked about your series of books. Where can people get a hold of you? And then, how can they access your work, your new book? Where is it, and how can they buy it?
Thank you for the question. Anywhere online where books are sold, this book shows up. So if you have a preferred place that you like to buy books, you can get it there. My main website for where there are links to the purchase, but as well as where you can read some of the poems is jewishpoetry.net. And then so that's a great place to see the stuff as well as I send out a new poem every week. You can subscribe to that via email on that website. And then my sort of non-Jewish, quote, regular website is poetrysuperhighway.com. And, I write a lot of travel poetry books as well. Most recent one is called High Moose Alert. Speaking of critters, it's my wife Addie and I, we went to Alaska 2 summers ago, and it's all poems written during that 2 week trip to actually Vancouver, the Canadian Yukon, and Alaska, with the main hope of seeing critters wandering around everywhere. So we were on High Moose Alert. So those are the places, poetrysuperhighway.com and jewishpoetry.net.
Okay, thank you so much. And Richard, how can people get a hold of you? And what do you have cooking up for people that people can buy or subscribe to a newsletter or whatever? Yeah.
Well, my book, The Forbidden Lunchbox, you can buy online at any place that sells books, or you can go to the Punk Hostage Press website and check it out there. I have a Substack, just Richard Modiano on Substack.
Okay.
That's about it for me.
Okay, great. And just one more thing, I guess, because I do have you, and we have a few more minutes. So I have so far, I know that the mythic origin story of Ellen Maybe was the Iguana Cafe, and it was Iris, and it was Essay. And do you remember exactly how it went, how it played out? Like the 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 whatever the sign up she was passed around, and then Ellen wasn't sure if she was going to read or not, and all of a sudden,
Well, I can't. I only know it by hearsay. I wasn't there.
okay, okay,
Amelie Frank told me the story.
yeah,
She was there.
Yeah, I mean, when I showed up at the Iguana Cafe, maybe a year or so into, well, actually, it was very much at the beginning of my time being a poet in Los Angeles, but
hmm,
Ellen was already a force of nature, and that
yeah,
story, just as you told it, uh, it already existed. So
okay,
I don't know if there's any more to say about that. She wasn't sure. She wrote maybe, and that became her nom de plume.
yeah. I think that in itself is a kind of like I love how there's almost like a palimpsest of tales, about people, and you can see little, whatever the impressions. I don't know if this makes any sense. It makes sense to me. I might write a poem just about this because you have the original story, originating story, right? And then you have the different, it's almost like Rashomon, right? It's like you have the different, perspectives on it, and then you have what actually happened. But at the certain point, it's like it becomes almost like a collage or a montage of people's recollections, and that in itself, how they feel about Ellen, that's like when you said, Rick, just now, that she was already a force of nature a year later, right? I think this is how myths are, created. And
I just
yeah,
on that, I remember one thing that was told to me, which is why I made that reference when I was at the Iguana
yeah,
Cafe, maybe for the first time, and Matthew Mars was there.
uh-huh,
I think I went to the poetry circle. It was like my first event as a poet,
yeah.
where it wasn't a reading. It was like you sit in around in a circle and everyone reads a poem and other people talk about it. And that's, before I self-identified as a poet, just to see how my stuff would do. But I think Matthew pointed to Ellyn either at that event or soon thereafter and said, she's our God.
Yeah, it does feel that way. It does feel that way. Yeah, so I'm just going to leave it at that. So thank you, um, Rick Lupert and Richard Modiano, so much for being my guests, and we will see you. We will see you soon.
Thanks again, Alex.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks for having me. By the way, I think Invisible Shit also would be a good title for a book or a poem.
Okay, note to self. But excuse me, my cat got in the way. I think has legs, so be looking out for my emails. You know they're coming.
Sure.
All right.
Okay, take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.